all of these different things that I experienced and all these different people I've met have just taught me that whatever, you can just figure it out. Bill Gates, Zuckerberg, at one point, these guys were all infants who knew nothing, right? And everybody has different legs up and different backgrounds and different advantages, but everybody also has different weaknesses and different struggles and different disadvantages. And you just have to get up each day and just try. And if there's nothing that you can achieve or can't do, if you really want to and want to put your mind to it.
Welcome to Behind the Story with me, Jelani Gonzalez. Today, we're diving into one of the biggest topics affecting families, entrepreneurs, and investors right now, the real estate market. Prices are high, interest rates have skyrocketed, and a lot of people are trying to figure out whether to buy, sell, wait, or invest. So today, I'm talking to Alex LaChance, a top realtor known for guiding first-time buyers and investors. He's built a reputation not just for closing deals, but for educating people on how to navigate today's market with clarity and confidence. Let's get into it.
Alex, welcome to BTS.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Now, before we get into the market and start talking about all things real estate, let's start with your journey. What led you into real estate and what keeps you passionate about it?
So this is probably my number one told story is how I got into real estate. But I was working for a glass company. We did all kinds of glass. I mean, everything from high rise commercial glass to windshields to cutting a little piece of glass for grandma's picture frame for the holidays, that type of stuff. And I was middle management, and it's about the worst place to be in any company because you're getting everybody's BS from the bottom and from the top. And I just had a complete mental breakdown one day. And years prior, when I had been looking for a job, I had encountered a guy named Randy Rush, who owns a real estate company here called Regarding Real Estate. And I'd sat down and talked with him, and he said, "Hey, you want to do this? It's your timeline. You can do it part-time, as little as much as you want. Anytime you have free time, come in, work with me. If I'm making calls, you're making calls with me. If I'm out on a listing appointment, you're going with me." And when I had my mental breakdown and quit that job on the spot, I came home and I had 3-month-old daughter. I had about $1,000 in my bank account. My wife's like, my wife had just come back from maternity leave to her job, which wasn't she wasn't making a ton of money either. And she said, "What are we gonna do?" And I said, "I don't know. I need to sleep on it because I'm out of my mind right now." But the next day she said, "You always want to go get your real estate license. Why don't you just do that now? Take advantage of this time and go do it." And my mother paid for my classes, and I went, and I didn't know why I wanted to do it. That you always have that, like, people have that story of why they wanted to do something. I have no idea. It was just kind of something that I had stumbled upon, and then I didn't pursue. And then years later, the opportunity to pursue it came. And I went back to Randy and I said, "Hey, you still want to teach me?" He said, "Yep, absolutely. Get your license and come see me." And just like he said, he was true to his word, which is a rare thing in the real estate business when these brokerages are trying to recruit you.
Yes.
They tell you everything you want to hear, and a lot of it doesn't turn out to be true. But he was true to his word. He trained me. He gave me everything I needed. I mean, it was like, you need to take a ream of paper out of the office home to print at home, take it, just a great mentor and a great guy to help me get started. And then I did find the passion for it. I found my reason why. I realized that I do love helping people achieve important things in their life. And, if you look at a hierarchy of needs, there's air, water, food, shelter, right?
Right.
So, housing is very important. I mean, the industry is cheesy. Like there's a lot of cheesy salesman stuff, like almost like the used car salesman kind of archetype.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, it is something very important that we're doing. And that's helping people secure housing, and also a lot of times helping people when they need to get rid of their housing under a lot of tragic circumstances as well. And being an empathetic guide through that. I tell people all the time, agents that I work with, it's like, stop thinking about this as a simple transaction, a simple process. It is to us because we do it every day.
Right.
But to these people, it is the most stressful thing that most people go through. Most people don't make a purchase bigger than that. Unless you're a big business owner or can afford a private jet, there's not many higher ticket sales items out there.
Right. That's very true. Alex, you're based in the New England area. For people who don't know, what's considered the New England area and what makes this region unique from a real estate perspective?
So New England is Maine. It's multiple states. Maine, New Hampshire, which is where I am. I grew up in Maine as well. Vermont is to our west. To our south is Massachusetts. That's where Boston is. For people listening globally, Boston is usually, if I travel outside of the country, and I say New Hampshire and they go, I don't know, it's okay, near Boston. I'm about an hour from Boston where I am. Then you have Rhode Island and Connecticut.
Okay.
We were joking before we started recording, but I said I don't really consider Connecticut
Part of it, yeah.
part of New England. It's a different world. And same with Rhode Island, and even Massachusetts is completely different. I had my Massachusetts real estate license. I lived a little closer to the border prior to where I live now, and I had my Massachusetts real estate license for 2 years. I only used it one time. And real estate's done a lot differently procedurally in Massachusetts. And but whenever people ask me, why don't you still have your Massachusetts license, I say, they tell you not to sell a product you don't believe in, and I don't believe in living in Massachusetts. And it's really true. Like, I have tons of friends there. We go there to visit. We go to, obviously, like, I grew up on Boston sports because there's nothing north of that. So it's like we go to Boston. We were just in Boston the other day, actually. My family went down for this big Christmas craft fair thing. But it's not that I hate the place. It's just not for me. And it's not my area of expertise. I'm not passionate about it. When people are like, "Oh, what do you love about New Hampshire?" I can talk about it for days. You ask me about that in Massachusetts, I don't really have a lot, So yeah, I just your original question was, what's New England? So the unique thing about New England, is particularly in New Hampshire, is there's more people moving here than moving out. So on top of there already being a housing shortage, we have more people coming to our state than leaving. So that's driving values up. And, most recent stat I saw was the median income in New Hampshire is only 80% of what you need to afford a median price home. Because we have just these incomes from other states flowing in. I mean, during COVID, we were talking to people moving here from New York, still keeping their job in New York, but they only had to go to the office once a month. So to sell, their $1 million house in Queens that they could replace here for $400,000 and just travel down and have a hotel room for 2 nights when they got to go to the office, it was well worth it for them to make the jump. And even more so with people who work in Boston. I mean, where I sit right now, without traffic, it's about an hour to Boston. So, people can live here, pay New Hampshire prices, and make Boston money. You're just seeing and then, outside of the economic and the job market, you have where I sit right now, it's 45 minutes to the ocean. I can be at Hampton Beach, which isn't the place I like to go, but my wife likes it and it's fun for the kids. They get like a boardwalk, they got arcades and stuff, fried dough, stuff like that. Hampton Beach, and then if you drive an hour north, you're in the White Mountains, some of the most beautiful hiking in the world, in my opinion. You'll have the people out in the Rockies argue with you quite often about that, but the New England trails are amazing to me. I love the New Hampshire wilderness, and like we already touched on, you're an hour from Boston, so I have access to a great international airport. I have access to every concert tour, every comedy tour. All 4 major sports, actually, you could say 5, because Major League Soccer is in the same stadium as the New England Patriots. So you just have access to so many things while living in, even though the prices are high and more than what most people can afford, it's still cheaper than living in Boston. And you just have this proximity to so many great things. And even where, I'm rural, but I'm 20 minutes to downtown Manchester, New Hampshire, which is the largest city north of Boston in the U.S. I just saw the other day, I never knew one of the buildings there is actually the tallest building north of Boston too. And then just north of me is Concord, New Hampshire, which is our capital, which has another great downtown, bunch of local restaurants. So it's just a great place to live for a ton of reasons, other than the 8 inches of snow that's being dumped on me right outside these windows right now. That I don't prefer. But if people love skiing and snowboarding, I mean, it's some of the best in the world too.
I can absolutely endorse what you're saying about how nice that place looks, because coming from the islands, I had the beaches, obviously, but the most beautiful colors I've ever seen in my life is autumn going through New England. And I've never seen colors like that in my life. I mean, it was just amazing. So I definitely endorse what you say about
I always
how,
forget about that too because I grew up with it. I grew up here. I grew up in the hills of Maine too. So when I first heard the term leaf peeping, which people travel here specifically, I mean, it drives our tourism, our hotel businesses, all our service businesses in those couple months are so busy and doing so well. And to me, I'm like, to look at the leaves,
yeah,
all I know is I got to go out and rake them when they fall.
of course. And for
But
me,
I
it's
get it.
like,
It is beautiful. When I sit back and actually look at the photography that people get, and especially everybody has a drone now, and just see how gorgeous it is, you can appreciate it. But you take it for granted when you live here, for sure.
of course. Of course, that's me in the islands, growing up in the Virgin Islands. I lived by the beach and I had a little dinghy rowboat. So when people talk about the beach and the sand, I'm thinking, who cares? I just walked to it when I was
Yeah,
a child. So I
and
get what you
it's
mean.
you go to our beach here in the summer. There's 100,000. You can't move. You can't find a place to park. You go into some. I've never been to the Virgin Islands, but I've been in a lot of the Caribbean islands, and some of those beaches you go, there's nobody there. They
Nobody
just
there.
drive right up, walk out, and it's a different experience. That I've
Yeah.
had so many friends that don't travel tell me they hate
Mhm.
the beach. I'm like, you gotta go to other parts of the world
World,
where
yeah.
the water's not 60 degrees year round. Also,
Exactly. It's like tub water is what we
yeah,
call it. Yeah, it's great. Alex, let me ask you about what you talked about earlier about people moving there that were working remotely. We've seen lots of companies now have the RTOs, the return to office,
yeah.
where they're making people come back. Have you seen an impact on sales from that perspective? I wonder.
Everything. It's hard to say because around the same time is when the interest rates started climbing again.
Hmm.
So I don't really know the direct impact on that. I haven't really heard much of it in my personal life.
Hmm.
I don't know that it really affected people as much as the news would like us to think it did. And I think that's especially in real estate. I caution people. It's like the news is trying to sell you a story. They're trying to make something out of nothing a lot of time. One of the local stations contacts me all the time. Every time there's a 0.1% change in interest rates, or the new pricing comes out, it's like, oh, pricing went down in November. Yeah, it does every year. But I get these reporters will call me and want to do a story. It's like they're always trying to make stories out of things. So I know these return to work things were real. My mother-in-law was a federal employee and had to go back to work when they were doing that. Was that a Doge thing, and she had to go back to the office. But I haven't heard it as a widespread thing, and I still get calls constantly of people moving from other places who work remotely. So I don't know that it was as widespread as it was reported to be.
Understood.
But I didn't really see a direct impact. I didn't really see demand went down because of the interest rates. I mean, at the end of the day, I built my business from blue collar, first time home buyers. Those were my people because I had a construction background. I didn't grow up. I mean, what I have now is more than what I ever grew up with. What my parents today have, they're fine, but I have hit this point where like all my clients are in or all the people I grew up with. I shouldn't say all. A lot of people have succeeded too, but a lot of the people I grew up with, a lot of people I worked with, they're still in this like paycheck to paycheck mode, and those have been my people. But when the interest rates shot up to 8%. I couldn't do anything with them anymore. It was, I mean, I had at the beginning of 2022, I must have had 30, 40 buyers in my pipeline. And I have a whiteboard that's right behind the monitor that you're on. And I had a list of 30 people. And I went by that. I kept calling them, and it was like every week I'd lose two or three more because they're just getting priced out of the market. So I did have to start working with other people, uh, finding a new niche of people to work with. I think it's starting to turn a corner. We're now in a new normal. I did see for like the first time in a long time wage growth outpace inflation it was just for 1 month,
One
but
month. Yeah.
it's I think we're starting to turn a corner a little bit where there's a new normal. It's kind of balancing out. But I honestly have no idea how I got to this whole train of thought that I'm rambling about right now. So
Now refresh your memory.
I'll
And
let
you
you
did, no,
regroup
you
it
did,
back.
you answered the question and you gave some valuable other information. I was asking you whether or not the return to office impacted sales.
Yeah, that's
And you
right.
said you hadn't
Yeah,
seen that, but what you had seen was what you explained, the
right.
interest rates taking a hit in that.
Yeah,
So no,
that
you
I just
answered it and gave more.
That was just such a bigger impact than that I think it just washed it away.
Yes.
And I that's something, I didn't see the return to work issue in my own business, but I did see the interest rate thing in my own business because of the type of clients I was working with. And I loved working with because it was so many people that would say, they never thought they had a chance at home ownership. And I'd say, hey, let's look at the numbers. Let's get you to a loan officer and let's see if it will work or not. And many people were surprised that they could actually do it.
I can imagine that's the most rewarding part, taking somebody that didn't think they could even qualify and say, no, 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 let's look at it. It's a possibility. And then being able to tell them, yeah, I've got you. Here's what we
Yeah.
can do. That must
Yeah.
be the most rewarding feeling, I would
I
think.
can tell you my most the time I almost cried at the closing table. I had to choke it back. I had a family. They were living in a 2-bedroom apartment. They had I think he was 10 or 11 at the time, son, and they had a newborn daughter. A 2-bedroom apartment. The son was basically living in a dining room with a curtain, hiding his bed from the rest of the house. And we found a place that, very low budget, not much cash out of pocket. We ended up actually, I think they only spent money out of pocket on like the inspections. It was a VA loan. They had to put a deposit back, but they got their deposit. They had to put a deposit down. They got their deposit back at closing. But we're at that closing table in the sun the whole time. Didn't stop talking about finally having a room, having a yard, how there's a creek in the backyard he could go catch frogs, how his dad's going to help him build a tree house because now they have trees. I mean, it was 45 minutes straight of him talking about how much having that, and I feel like I'm going to cry now, about having, how much having that house meant to him. Uh, those, I've worked with people that have $1 million in the bank, and it's like, it's just write a check. It's not tough for them. There was never any doubt that they could do it.
Yeah.
When the doubt is there, kids, as much as you try to keep your struggles from your children, kids know you're struggling, right?
Yeah.
So, they see my mom and dad can't afford any more than this, and then they can. And that means more to the kids, I think, than the parents, whether they know it at the time or not.
Man, I've got to say thank you. That's just brilliant because that's the kind of story that I like because it gives hope that it's still opportunity here for us, no matter what we're hearing in the news and how dire everything is. When you hear a story like that, it gives us hope. And I love it. What's something about being a realtor today that, people don't see behind the scenes? Like what would that be if you wanted to share?
Well, I think it's kind of everything, right? It's everything that goes into it that isn't directly with the client, right? Because you hear somebody has, oh, you made $10,000 to open a lockbox and fill out we joke and say it's a Mad Lib because we fill out like a form, it's a fill in the blank form. And yeah, those things are very simple. And that is a big part of it. That's what actually is. But to get to that point, often some of these people I'm working with for years, I've had 100 conversations before we even go look at a house. They don't see when I'm at my kids' gymnastics meet and I'm texting a client. They don't see when I'm on vacation, when I'm standing, I live a great life and I'm not complaining. I don't want anybody to ever think any of these things are complaints. It's just part of the business. But they don't see that when I take my kid to Disney World, which I'm blessed and lucky to do, that I'm standing in line at these rides negotiating real estate deals. They don't see that I go to bed stressed out because I'm worried about my client being homeless. And I know some people can disconnect from that better than others. I
Yes.
have a hard time with it. It took me many years before I could do it at all to any extent. But, I don't think people see how much we actually deal with and put on our shoulders to get to the point where we can do the couple easy things that lets us cash a check. And you always get this pushback of like, we're just paying for all your marketing costs. Like, yeah, you think Coca-Cola's not wrapping that into their price when they do a Super Bowl commercial? Every business, you're paying for their marketing costs. They're like, oh, we're paying. A lot of the agents will push back when they say we're paid too much, and they'll say, well, you don't know about the 10 clients that I failed with before I succeeded. They're like, why do I have to pay for your failures? guess what? You're doing that with every other business. If Walmart has the lights on and 100 customers come through and don't buy anything, you still paid for that light bill. It's just, it's any business is like that. But I think where we're directly getting paid, where it's a 1-for-1. Every dollar that comes out just goes to us. There's not a big, obviously we have splits with our brokerages and memberships we have to pay for and everything, but we are getting a big lump sum of money directly to us at once. But I'm also my own marketing department and my own customer service. So I just don't, I think a lot of people, it gets lost on them how much goes into it. I mean, all my clients, they see what I do. I have, my clients are always grateful. A lot of times we remain friends and remain in contact forever after the sale. But I think the general public just has this perception that we don't do anything. I work more now than I did when I had a regular job, for sure.
Of course.
But again, no complaints.
Like
no complaints. It's a great life.
Noted. You talked earlier about, rising interest rates and the low inventory, high demand. What are some of the biggest, forces that are shaping the market right now from your perspective?
I mean, honestly, the interest rate thing, and I also have a mortgage license. The way, money to me is, we're basically talking about monopoly money. It's not, the financial markets are such a scam to me in general. But, I always use this phrase. I didn't invent capitalism. I'm just doing the best I can in it. That's all, but the market, the factors in housing prices and demand just comes down to, we had that big crash in 2008, right? And it was quite a few years before it started to recover. In all those years, people stopped building. If you look at the stats of, and this isn't something I've looked at recently, so I'm not going to try to give you numbers, but if you look at the stats on housing starts, on permits pulled to build housing, it was way down for about 10 years. Population didn't stop growing. The U.S. population continued to grow while new housing declined. So we had all these household formations, which is the term they use in the industry, no place to put them, essentially. And then what you do see built, because cost of acquiring land and material and everything, all these builders are building $800,000 to $1 million homes. That's like, there is no 1,500 square foot ranch with, linoleum floor being built. Everything is granite countertop, hardwood floors, 5,000 square foot house on, 2 to 3 to 4 acres. So you don't have, now this helps, right? Because, that is taking somebody they might upgrade out of a home that's a starter home, and then that frees up a house. But it's also a lot slower building process than if you're putting up a subdivision of all these smaller houses, right? Where, if you go back, look at some of these, you see the aerial view, you see it when you fly in a plane, you fly into a city and you look down and you see these subdivisions that are thousands of houses, right? And they're right on top of each other, but they're all, they're 1,000 square foot ranches. That type of building just doesn't really happen anymore. And you just have demand. You also, you're seeing a shift back, but you don't have families staying together and living together like they used to. You have, a lot more divorce, a lot more, single parents. You're starting to see a pushback just because people have to. You're seeing a lot of these accessory dwellings and multi-generational living happening again. And even the kind of the compound where it's like you buy a big lot and put a few houses on it, starting to see those things happening again. But, you just basically, for years, you just didn't have enough building to meet the population growth, and the average age of the first time home buyer went up into I believe the late 30s. And you have, so now you have delayed housing, or delayed housing purchases. And you have, so I'm a millennial. I don't know how old you are, but I'm 42. Now, we were the generation, right? They like, go to college, everything will work out, right? That's pretty much.
We've learned.
And I graduated in 2001, so like, I graduated and the 9/11 happened, so the whole world changed at that point, right?
Changed,
and,
yes.
And so many of the people I know, they got into crazy student debt, never used that degree. We're just about 10 years behind on getting their adult life started, really, with nothing to
Yes.
show for it. Now you see, so that a lot of these people my age are still becoming first-time home buyers. But I also work
Right.
with a lot of these Gen Z kids, in mid-20s, mid to late 20s, who are, or even early 30s, I guess, who if they went to college, they knew why they were going. They had a path. Like, they went to college with a specific, this is the job I'm going to do when I get out, and they're doing well. A lot of tech and finance people are doing well. So you have two whole generations becoming first-time home buyers at once. That's what I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, and they're competing against each other and driving the pricing up. And I don't see any end in sight, at least in this area. We are seeing declining prices in some spots in the US, but in this area, I don't see it changing because people just keep coming here.
Would you say, what market are we in currently, or in that area? Would you say it's a buyer's market, seller's
Well, it's
market?
definitely a seller's market still. It's not as, yeah, it's not as brutally a seller's market as it used to. It's funny because I started real estate in 2018, and all the
Mhm.
old real estate agents are like, hey, it's a shifting market. The bubble's bursting. I'm like, okay, I've watched prices double since then, and I still hear it. I still hear, oh, the market's shifting. And especially this time of year, because every year we peak in July or August. We see our new record year. Every year I've been in real estate, new record price in the summer. And then
Mhm.
it dips through, September, October, December. In
Mhm.
January, it kind of flattens out. In the spring, it's going back up again. And every year, this time of year, I hear agents going, oh, the market's shifting. It's turning. You better be ready to work in a buyer's market. And I'm like, it's not a buyer's market. I think we're still just barely over 2 months of inventory. You got to get to like 4 before it's even considered a normal market. Yeah, it's definitely a buyer's market. I mean, a seller's market, but people get tricked because it's not what it was 2 years ago when interest rates were, 2.5%. And people were basically offering their firstborn to get into the house. I remember right when it kind of started, I had a listing that I was like, oh, this must be worth about 260, right? After I look at comps and do the 260, let's list at 250. I had, 60 showings booked within 2 or 3 hours, and I ended up with 30 offers in a day. And I was like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And quickly we all adjusted and figured out, okay, things are moving up faster. You got to add a little to these prices because we went up 20% a year for 2 years. So I
Mhm.
think today a lot of people get tricked
Into
into
thinking it's a
thinking
buyer's market,
it's a buyer's
but it's
market
not.
because there's only
What are
5
some
offers on the house.
so what are some of the misconceptions that you're hearing or seeing along those lines?
I just what I'm saying is people don't see that it's not a linear path. That's probably the biggest thing where people get confused, is that real estate pricing is not a linear path. It's not a straight line. It's always, even weekend to weekend, even like, we just went through Thanksgiving. I had a listing appointment right before Thanksgiving, and I said, do you guys need to sell this house now? Do you need to start this process now? Because if not, well, let's wait till after the holidays, because a lot of buyers are checked out right now, especially, where we've been in a seller's market for so long. These buyers are shopping for 2 or 3 years, and it hits Thanksgiving and they go, why don't we take a break? Why don't we back off a little bit? We'll regroup. And a lot of times I've seen that, like, actually, like, as soon as somebody kind of gives up, that's when the house falls in their lap. Like, sometimes you just try too hard. But yeah, the biggest misconception I would say is that it is a linear path and that, like, there's an exact science to it. There's really not. If you go to a condo complex where everything's a cookie cutter, it's pretty easy to go, okay, this is how much something should cost. Anything else, there's too much uniqueness to housing that, even, there's on my street right here, there's, 7 or 8 houses that are cookie cutter of mine, but mine is on 5 acres versus the other on 2. But my part of my 5 acres is power lines for the electric company.
Okay.
I own that land, but I can't really use it because it's power lines and they have to access it to do their work. I have to drive on my dirt driveway under the power lines to get into my property. So, there's uniqueness. Like, you couldn't compare my house to the one just like mine down the street. And then also over time, we do different updates, different upgrades, different finishes. So, real estate is not an exact science. Pricing is an exact science. You certainly can't count on Zillow's metrics or Realtor.com or Redfin. I mean, go look at all three sites. You'll see a different price on every house, because it's in an exact science. And I think so many people, and then on the flip side of that, you see I see a lot on Facebook where somebody posts a listing and go, $500,000 for a house that's worth 300. It's like, okay, well, it's not worth 300 if somebody pays 500. The definition of value is whatever the market's willing to pay for it. What is it? Not under duress or something like that. Is that, the actual definition of market value.
Let's talk about the different types of buyers. Let's talk about first-time buyers first, obviously, pun intended. What are some of the challenges that you're seeing or the obstacles for them today?
The hardest part is people can't save money. I have a lot of people that make enough money and qualify to make the purchase if they just had the down payment and closing costs. And we have ways around that. We have down payment assistance programs, but a lot of those have income limits. So sometimes just like people have they make too much money to get the assistance. And then you go, okay, well, why aren't you saving? What's going on here? You should be able to put 3% down, plus your closing costs. But, I think we're in and I hate to act like Dave Ramsey because I can't stand him, but we're in a world where people are trying to impress each other, buying things they don't need, and just not focusing on what's important now. And if and hey, to each their own. If you want to blow all your money and live in an apartment, more power to you. Like, you only live once. Live the life you want to live. I'm not judging people, but if you come to me and tell me I want to buy a house, and you haven't figured, and you're a couple that each makes over $100,000 a year, and you haven't figured out how to save 30,000 of that, you don't want to buy a house. You're lying to yourself. Do you really want it or not? And then people who don't make enough money and just act like they're stuck. It's like, I told you my story. I had $1,000 in my name when I started this business. Now I own this house that I'm in. I owned a house at the time, but this house is twice the size of my last one. I never thought I'd own anything like this. I didn't have. My mom paid my $300 real estate course. We'll say that. Not everybody has that luck, but it's like you could go find $300 and go take a class. And I'm not saying you have to do real estate. There's hundreds of ways to make more money. And it drives me nuts because it's almost like you're a jerk if you tell people go make more money. But what other answer do we have? I know it's harder than it needs to be. I know society is beating people down in a lot of ways, but it's like I've seen so many people rise out of it. Some of the people that I know that have come from the worst backgrounds, own businesses, own houses, are landlords. There's a way out. And I just think that's the biggest challenge is people getting out of their own way, either making enough money to do it, or if they already make enough money, hunkering down and saying, I'm going to save some of this money so that I can actually buy the house,
I think part of it too is, and I could speak from personal experience, part of it too is financial literacy. And I harken back to some advice I got from a business person. He said, I was talking about something similar a few years ago about not having enough money or whatnot. And he said, let me do you a favor. Let's look at what you've got. He said, let's look at your credit cards. If you total up all the monthly payment of your credit cards, what's that number? And I told him, he said, that's your saving number. He said, if you eliminate your debt, he said, most people think about, I need to make more money. Sometimes it's just reallocating where it's going. And he gave me a plan to do that. And I literally, without taking out any loans or consolidation loans or whatnot, I figured out a way where I paid off all my debt with the exception of the house. And I can't tell you the feeling. I would literally log on to my apps every day of my different credit cards to just see balance zero. Feeling was so much power. I can't even tell you, but that's what propelled me to be able to afford the other things. Because now I eliminated $2,000 a month in monthly payments that you're not thinking because it's 50 here, 100 there, 200 there, 75 there. Because you're not thinking about it like that. You're just thinking, I'm just paying my monthly bills. But once you eliminate those, all of a sudden, it's like you gave yourself a raise. And that's where I got my savings from. It wasn't like, to your point, making extra money per se. It was like that financial literacy, which most people don't have. And you come up as a jerk if, like you say, if you tell them, well, you know what, where are you putting your money? And
Yeah.
then, so I get what you mean by
Yeah,
that.
when I first started doing well in real estate, that was one of the first things I worked on was eliminating. I was the same thing. I had stupid credit cards, and I remember buying $500 of fireworks on a credit card for 4th of July. I would.
It was fun though.
It was. We had a great time, but it didn't. It took away from my future great times, though. Having to
Right.
pay that interest.
Of course.
So yeah, that's very important as well. And I think I just kind of forgot because other than my mortgage, I've been debt free for a few years now, and I kind of forgot about that part of it. But you're 100% right. You need to do that. I on the mortgage side, I pull people's applications. I had somebody say to me, "Yeah, I don't really have much debt at all," and they have like a credit card with $10,000 on it. They have a $1,500 a month truck payment. I mean, it was more than 15% of their income.
Ow.
They had loans on multiple ATVs, like four-wheelers, that sort of thing. And it's like you said, you don't think you have much debt.
And there
what
it
do you
is.
think a lot of debt? I mean, I'm like half of your income is gone before you even start to think about housing.
Think about it. Yeah. I'm real anal about my DTI. My mortgage person taught me about that. I'm always looking at, okay, what's my DTI? I need to keep it at this percentage. I made it my own percentage of what it needs to be. And then I drive myself bananas if it goes above that. But back to the first time buyers, are you seeing them having to compete with like cash investor buyers because, investors buying those smaller properties to rent out? Are you seeing lots of competition there?
Less so than I did a couple of years ago. And the reason I think it's just gotten harder for those and the flippers. I think that's the ones that you're looking at mostly is people who flip housing.
Right.
In those scenarios, I think it's just gotten hard for them to compete. I think the people who need a place to live, because they're not looking at it as just a financial decision. They're not looking at it as just an investment.
So they will pay more. Whereas an investor, he has to be in certain parameters to make it worth
so I'm
it.
seeing less of that here. And when I do see it happen, I see that house come back on the market and I just laugh because I see what they have it priced at. And I'm like, I knew that when I went there. I can think of one specific one. I mean, this was, these people had hoarded cats. They must have had, I think it was like 100. It was in the news. They abandoned a bunch of cats in this property. It was really sad and gross, but the cats had like chewed through the cabinets to get at food. The smell, you could smell it in the driveway without even opening the door. It was crazy.
Wow.
But my client was going to buy it for himself and deal with it himself and get it fixed up and live in it. And we got beat by a house flipper. And I saw it come back on the market. I'm like, this is priced like $50,000 over what it'll ever sell for. And it's just, I think a lot of people, they teach, in a one weekend course in a hotel conference room, right? They teach people how to flip houses and there's too much nuance in it. There's not like, in the best scenario, it's going to work out exactly the way they said it's going to work out. But we know that it's rarely the best scenario. Like everything. Exactly. Yeah. The perfect doesn't really exist that often. A broken clock is right twice a day, but for the most part, you're going to have surprises, especially as a first time person doing it. You're going to miss things. So I think that's the times where I see the investors still beating the first time home buyers, but I'm not seeing it as much as I did a few years back.
In the context of the current market and everything that you already shared, let's say I'm a first time buyer and I'm not ready. And I say, hey, I want to purchase a new home in a year. What would you tell me to really focus on over the next year to get ready? What would that advice be?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I do, and I have the mortgage license now, but when I was just an agent, the first thing I would do is refer somebody to a loan officer. Because really, as just an agent, I don't know. Unless I can look at your full financial situation, I don't know. In general advice, there's a catch-22 with these first-time home buyer programs and these low down payment loans is like people think, oh, I don't have to have a lot of money saved up. And they do.
You still need reserves.
The more money, I'm sorry?
I said you still need reserves, don't you? Even
some of these loan programs, you don't even need to show reserves if your credit and income's good enough.
Isn't that what happened that got us into the financial crisis part of it back in the day?
Well, there's a lot of things that I think should be.
There's a lot of things.
that weren't, some things were overcorrected. So we could do a whole podcast on this.
I
And my
know
thoughts
this
on
on that.
But you know, I think in some ways they overcorrected. So like in disclosure, people are so confused by all the information that they're getting that the disclosure doesn't even help. Because one of the big things was like I got a loan in 2006.
Mhm.
I got foreclosed on in 2009. I had no idea what I was signing, no idea what I was getting.
It's like this much paper.
Well, no, it wasn't then though. And there was some con stuff that went on. They shorted my escrow account for taxes and insurance. And after the first year, we got an escrow adjustment. Our payments went up $300 a month just from that.
All of that.
And I was young. I was 24. I didn't realize I bought a house built in the 1700s that was oil heat. And that was around the time that we first saw gas prices go over $3 a gallon, you know, which is probably cheap for an island. But yeah, it was. And then I moved further away from my job, so the spending more on commute, you know, all these factors wound me to be foreclosed on. But it was also, there was no disclosure in education at all. Like I had no idea what I was getting into. It was sign here, here's your house, right? So when all the new laws came into play after the mortgage crisis, they tried to correct a lot of that, but they overcorrected it. And now all my clients have no idea what's going on because there's too
so
much. They can't read it all. They can't understand it all. So it's like we need to find a way to. I think we need to just take a step back and find a way to disclose all this information in a less confusing way. But the other part of it is, you know, like we were just talking about, the no reserves. Yeah, that's really a thing. There's loan programs for first-time home buyers that don't require any reserves at all.
Wow.
And you know, there's these very low down payments. So it's like, hey, if we do see a shift downward in the market, these people are going to be upside down. There's a lot of issues. I also I would take the debt, you know, debt to income is a great metric, right? That's a great overall metric, but also what kind of debt, right?
Right. Exactly.
If it's like, I would say, put a cap on how much somebody, because you could have, 15% debt to income, 30% debt to income. You buy a very affordable house, but if 15% of your debt to income ratio is a car payment, I don't want to lend to you. You're making reckless decisions. If you've got multiple credit cards over $5,000 of balance, you're reckless. You know, I think we should look at the individual debts, not just the overall debt to income ratio, because I think that's a better predictor of somebody because I've seen people, their debt to income is close to 50%, but they have no other debt. It's just the house. Right. It's like, okay, that person's not
They're just in the house. Right.
It's going to be tough, you know. Nobody wants, because a lot of things. There's one that a great thing that for first-time home buyers to think about is that debt to income is pre-tax. So your debt to income is actually higher than because if you actually look at your take home, your debt to income
even less.
Your debt to income's higher.
It's higher. Yeah.
But yeah, I would look at, you know, derailing this with the mortgage law stuff, but I would look at things in a much more nuanced way, as a way to, and we have the technology to do it very easily now.
Underwriters allowed to do that, Alex? Are they allowed to look at it nuanced, or do they have specific regulations that they've got to follow?
They have specific regulations that they have to follow. There are, and I'm not super well versed on the underwriting, the way an underwriter operates. There are some things that they can use their own discretion on. That is a thing. But when it comes to numbers, I mean, they're not ever, because at the end of the day, the underwriter works for the mortgage company, right? The lender, that the more loans they can sell, the more money they make. So these big national lenders, so the company I work for is a mortgage broker. And we broker out a lot of our loans to United Wholesale Mortgage, which is the biggest wholesale lender in the United States, is last I knew anyway. And they just want nothing more than to sell more loans. Whatever they can do to sell more loans, that's what they're going to do. So if you're an underwriter working for them, you're not gonna ruffle feathers and go, I don't think this person can afford it. You're gonna if they fit the guidelines, they're gonna get the loan. You know, right. So
got it.
I don't know if they're even allowed to do that, but yeah, they're unfortunately, everybody benefits by the loans going through. Nobody benefits by the loans not going through. Other than, you know, you don't want to do shady thing to push a mortgage through and then lose your license and lose your livelihood forever. But otherwise, if you can get the thing to go through, everybody benefits. And that's the unfortunate part of what I do as an agent too, is like, as a buyer's agent, I don't make money until I close, but my job isn't to sell them something. I should be guiding them to the right thing, no matter how
Right.
long that takes. Unfortunately, too many people don't look at it that way, and they go, let's just sell this buyer whatever.
And be gone. Yeah. What are some of the challenges that buyers that are trying to upgrade are facing today that they didn't say back in 2020 or 2021, for example?
The biggest one, I mean, most people, I'm like myself, I'm not moving out of this house because I have a 3.25% interest rate.
So that is a real thing, because I've seen that in the news that
Yeah.
that's one of the barriers. So that is a real thing.
That's both. It's a barrier to affordability because you don't have these empty nesters, the baby boomer generation moving out of their house. My parents, I mean, they can't move. They have a 1,000 square foot, 4-bedroom house, just the two of them. They're not going anywhere because they just can't. I mean, they own their house outright. They don't even have a mortgage, but they're not going to take on a 6% mortgage at today's prices. Just makes no sense. So that's the biggest challenge to the upgrade. And then also, if you have to, I was fortunate when I bought my house that we were able to keep both houses. We sold our other one shortly after, but I didn't need that house. I didn't need that mortgage gone. I didn't need the cash from it to be able to close on this current house. So I was able to, we just had like 3 weeks in between where we owned 2 houses. But most people have to sell the house that they currently own before. Yeah. And that's very hard because, so say and I think you see it more the downsizing than the upgrading, because you see, people downsizing. Now they're competing against first-time home buyers. Well, if you're trying to sell a house to buy the new house, you have to put in your contract contingent upon the closed sale of, 123 Fruit Street.
Right.
And that seller is going to just want the buyer who doesn't need to do that. So if you get into a competitive situation and you have to sell a house before you can buy your new house, you're going to lose to somebody that doesn't have to do that. If the offers are relatively apples to apples. So that's probably between the interest rate upgrade for most people and that having to have that contingency in your offers, those are the 2 biggest challenges.
What's the temperature like in the area now for investors? Are they pulling back? Are they leaning in? What's going on?
I see these and I don't work with it. I have a handful of small time investors that I work with here and there, but I don't work with it a ton. But I see some of these multifamily properties in our biggest cities, just south of me, Manchester. Mm-hmm. And I look at the sales prices and I look at what the income is, and I can't even fathom why somebody would be paying as much as they are as an investment. The only thing that I see is Manchester's continuously growing. Businesses are coming in. Population's growing. I think they're investing for the future. I think they're prospecting on this whole area is going to grow up. And I might just be at a break-even point on this home now, especially if they're cash investors. They don't have to cover a mortgage balance. They're like, hey, I'll park my money here. As we see this area blow up, this house is going to appreciate in value. The rent prices are going to go up higher. Mm-hmm. But from a fundamental investment standpoint, the money that's being spent on some of these multifamilies up here, I don't even understand it. And I get that from some of my old time, I would call them mom and pop investors, people that own, less than 20 doors that maybe bought a bunch of property in the 90s or early 2000s. They want more, and they're going, how does this work? What do you mean you're going to pay $1,000 for a house that only generates $4,000 in rent? Doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm like, yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me either. But unfortunately, people are doing it, and that's going to push you out of the market.
Are you seeing any local legislation that's affecting investors? I was reading the other day that Nevada passed a law restricting how many properties businesses or companies can purchase.
Really? I didn't see that.
Yeah, it's brand new. I think it was a couple of weeks ago to where, because what happened in Nevada, and especially the Vegas area, is what you talked about, people working remotely, being able to move and buy much larger properties than they could in, say, nearby California. And it really made, for local people, the prices are just out of control.
So you're talking about they can't own, it's a limit on residential properties they can own.
Yes, residential.
Because I was going to say, I know tourism has gone down in Vegas, and I'm like, I don't know why they would want to stifle commercial investment, but okay.
Yeah.
And I think, there's obviously a lot of, you could go all the way back to the Occupy Wall Street movement, and people talking about institutional investors, and, nobody listened to them then. And then we see what's happened.
Yeah.
I don't think New Hampshire is going to be anybody state that leads the charge on this. Our slogan is "Live free or die." That's the state. That's the state motto.
Right. Very libertarian.
it's, I always say it's a purple state, right? It's, they don't, the state legislature it's one of the largest legislative bodies in the world. I think it's like the third largest. It doesn't pay at all. So you have hundreds of retired people making the decisions here. They are the ones who own all this property. They're not going to put any restrictions on themselves.
Right.
And who knows? I mean, things can change. Maybe we see a push to a younger legislative body, but you're not getting paid for it. So how can you do the job unless you're retired or independently wealthy otherwise? So our laws tend to be very pro landlord, very pro investor. I did just see there was something going through. I don't know if where it's sitting now. They were because one of the things that investors love in New Hampshire is to evict. All you have to do is give a 30-day notice and say it's for the purpose of renovations.
Wow.
And now that there was a law to change that to, you would have to prove that the renovations were necessary and prove that you couldn't do the renovations with
the person
the
there.
tenant still there. I don't know if that law is still being pushed or if it died or got passed. I didn't follow up on that. In my 8 years, that's the only
that you know about.
That's the only anti-landlord law I can remember hearing. One great thing that New Hampshire has pushed through, though, as far as, helping people have housing, is that any residential zoning, an accessory dwelling cannot be denied. So in-law apartments is the kind of the old school term for that. You just have to conform to building code and other zoning ordinance and whatnot. But they can't, if you have a residential property, they have to allow you to put an accessory dwelling. And that way, my parents who can't move out of their house, if I added on to my house, they could come here and live with me. That's what that is intended for. And, a lot of people are renting those units out and then maybe they're not supposed to, but that's still alleviating some of the problem, putting people in homes. So that's a good thing. And originally it was only for attached accessory dwellings. Now they've upgraded the law to allow a detached accessory dwellings.
Good. I'll help with all the prefab houses that they're building now. The box homes they're building.
Yeah. My real estate friend of mine, Jess Stevenson, owns a company called Construct Tiny Homes. I actually had her on my own podcast, and I see their signs up all over the place now. They're putting these little tiny homes in people's backyards. It's great. I mean,
it's a company called Boxable based in Las Vegas. It's called Boxable, and they have a 3-year waiting list on.
Are those container homes?
Yeah, they're not containers. They actually build a home in the factory, disassemble it, and deliver it to wherever you are, and then assemble it. It's not a box. It's not container. It's literally prefab. Is what I think it's called.
I only brought that up because a lot of people ask me about
the containers go.
Yeah, I've been told that with our climate, moisture issues are a real problem where we have such a varied. I mean, we go from negative temperatures to over 100 where we are. So
think of that. A friend of mine in England converted one of those shipping containers.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah,
into a salon for his daughter.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but he's an engineer, so I mean, I'm sure he sorted it.
But England's not as extreme as ours, but it's a similar climate.
But it's northern England too, so it's where it's up in Manchester, where it's kind of snows a lot and stuff there too. His backyard looks like the Scottish Highlands to me. It's like really like that. You talked earlier about this time of year being like the traditional downtime. Where do you see the trends heading into next year? Like you said, it starts to pick back up in the spring. And then the summer is the busy time. Where do you see things trending for next year?
I cannot see a scenario where if we were having this conversation next summer, where we weren't talking about a new record price.
Okay.
I just don't see demand going down. I just saw an article today. I just saw the headline. I didn't read it, but last week was the highest mortgage application since 2023. Demand's not changing. Interest rates have come down. We were 8, now we're close to 6. That trend should move downward. I mean, our economy is very unpredictable. Our political, whatever is all over.
Times. We're living in interesting times.
Yeah, but despite all that, it's like I still say if shit hits the fan completely and everything falls apart, wouldn't you still rather own your house than have somebody else own it? Because I have a lot of people like say, hey, the political climate is so crazy. I don't want to own it. Like, I don't want to get involved in it. It could just, the bottom could just fall out of it. It's like, if the
But
bottom
you own
falls
your
out of
house.
housing now, I think it falls out of everything. The only valuable commodity might be weaponry at that point,
Exactly.
but yeah, to your point about next year, I think we're going up. I don't see any scenario that values don't continue to climb. Now, it's not going to be the 20% year over year thing that we had during COVID. That was an anomaly. That had to do with the super low interest rates and all the other factors. But I think we're going to settle back into that 4% growth for the next, at least 5 years.
Do you see any shift in preferences as far as people wanting a certain square footage, amenities, land, or is it just still pretty much what it's always been?
People want too much, and I do see that growing. It's just it's the culture we're in now. It's a social media culture where you only see the best of the best. Everything people don't share their struggles.
They
People
don't show the reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everybody I struggle with this big time with people coming to me and just wanting too much. It's like, I want at least 10 acres. It's like, that's like 1% of properties, maybe, and it's, I have 5 and I tell them all the time, I'm like, it's too much. Let me show you my plowing bill. Let me show you my landscaping bill. It's like, you don't want to I'll send you, and I've posted this on social media. I posted a video of my walk to take my trash cans down my 500-foot driveway when it's raining in 32 degrees out. It's again, not complaining, blessed, I'm glad to have what I have, but there's downsides to it. And it's like, I really didn't want, we just landed here. I wasn't looking for the big property. It just happened. But, everybody's looking for that, I gotta have this, I gotta have that. And they want it on their first home. And I tell everybody, it's like, you're not gonna stay here forever. You're gonna sell this eventually, and then let's look at the dream. I ask in my buyer consultations, one of the questions I ask everybody is, what is the dream home? But then we're gonna go look at the budget, and then we're gonna go, okay, these are the pieces of this dream home that you're gonna be able to get, right? And one of the questions I ask after what is the dream home is, what's most important to you?
Right.
Or what are 3, and then what are 3 things you can't live without? And then we get as close to that dream as we can, but be reasonable about it. You don't want to be, nobody wants to be house poor. It's not like, if you have a beautiful house, you hear these like crazy hyper entrepreneurial guys going, I'd rather cry in my BMW than cheer in my Toyota, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's like, in real life, we'd rather be happy with less, then be sad with more.
On the tube, on the subway.
Yeah.
I'll have to even cry. How about that?
Yeah. Well, it's like, I mean, look at, you were in New York. I mean, I'm sure you knew people who lived in, 200 square foot apartments who went on to achieve amazing things, right? Like, it's, and that's what a city like New York will do. The education and the networking and the experiences you can get. But you struggle. It's one of the most expensive place to live. It's you live in a shoebox, but you get somewhere. How many Broadway stars and comedians and actors and all the stuff, it came from, they understood. Let's suffer for a little bit to get where we want. And it's like, I'm not even saying you have to suffer. Even a single wide mobile home is not suffering. There's I say this to people all the time. There's somebody sleeping under a bridge tonight. Any house is plenty of house, and start small. And yeah, I've definitely, even in my 8 years, I've seen it getting worse. And I do blame, and I'm a huge user of it. And I show all the cool stuff I'm doing and the cool stuff I have, so I'm contributing to the problem. But I would caution people to not believe any of that, know that there's, it's not what you need.
We're all
it's not
putting
what
the
everybody
best foot
has.
forward publicly. Yeah. Yeah, well, Alex, as we wrap up, share some personal insights. Like, what has real estate taught you about people?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Well, I think it's taught me how little, like, no matter how impressive somebody is, and this isn't about clients. This is because real estate has led me to meet, people who own big businesses and people who make millions of dollars a year. I've learned that nobody knows what they're doing. And the more complicated your life gets, the more you add to it, the higher you try to achieve, you're getting into areas where there's less and less and less of a playbook. Like, starting real estate, taking the real estate class, right? Thousands and thousands and thousands of people have done that. The amount of people who will actually succeed and make it a full-time job is like 5% of the people who actually take the classes, right? And then, I know I'm not one of them and I don't want to be one of them, but I know real estate agents who make $1 million a year. And I don't want to be them, but like, I know that they're not that much smarter than me. They're just willing to operate in a way that I don't operate. They've taken on, things that I don't want to do to get there. But they're not any brighter than me. Like they just figured it out, right? No, but I've just learned that people aren't that impressive, right? Just naturally. It's all just a willingness to get up every day and go, I'm going to figure out how to make this happen for myself. And I'm going to figure out how to make this work for the people around me. You think that real estate's cookie cutter and transactional, but it's every day. It's a new issue, a new problem that I haven't dealt with before. And I have to just go, all right, how does this work? I mean, houses are big, complicated objects. I mean, just heating systems alone. I mean, how many different furnaces are there? And if I stumble on a new broken one that I got to figure out how to have repaired before closing, all these little things that can come up. I mean, just figuring out new things every day. And I'm going all over the place with this answer, but it's all of these different things that I've experienced and all these different people I've met have just taught me that, like, whatever, you can just figure it out. Like Bill Gates, Zuckerberg, like at one point, these guys were all infants who knew nothing. Right. And everybody has different legs up and different backgrounds and different advantages, but everybody also has different weaknesses and different struggles and different disadvantages. And you just have to get up each day and just try. And if there's nothing that you can achieve or can't do, if you really want to and want to put your mind to it. I mean, I'm not going to be an NBA player, but maybe I could be the best pickup basketball player at the local YMCA, but I think everybody can do more and achieve more than they think they're going to do. Or that they'd be able to do. And I've learned that more and more through just experiencing all these people that I've just seen doing amazing things and going, there's nothing special about this guy. They're just willing to do the thing.
Yep. Well, Alex, thank you so much for coming on VTS and sharing your story. But before we go, how can people follow you, get in contact with you if they're interested in real estate in the New England area? Go ahead, share with the audience.
So I'm all over the place. I'm very hyper fixated on social media. That's pretty much my only marketing. So 603_real_estate on Instagram. It's the same thing on TikTok without the underscores. Find me on Alex LaChance on Facebook. I have a business page, but Meta has screwed up the business page thing so badly that I don't even touch it anymore.
And the company website? Company website, the real estate website.
So my two websites for real estate, because I have one for mortgage as well. I have www.603realestate.net and I have www.nhmortgage.net. And then also I want to say my YouTube, LaChance Encounters. That's the name of my podcast. And LaChance Encounters you can find everywhere you listen to podcasts. The same place you listen to this one, you can listen to more of me if you enjoyed it.
Perfect. Well, Alex, thank you again for your time today. Appreciate it.
Behind the store.